Every once in a while, someone does something in the world of running that's so revolutionary it completely resets the game, changes how we view it and what's possible. And this 61-year-old Australian cattle farmer called Cliff Young did exactly that in 1983. And this is an unbelievable story, trust me on this, but it is also just the tip of the iceberg. So to understand this story, we have to go even further back in a line of what I call game-changing moments or game changers in running. We need to understand their impact, but also we need to understand how this relates to you and me as runners and how we can impact our own running. And trust me, it does work. When I say trust me, you need to take it from Mary. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well so that we can help you some more. But before we go to the Cliff Young story, we need to go even further back. But if you are here for the Cliff Young story and you just want to skip ahead to that, I'm going to put a time code here so you can just get to that part. But for me, before Cliff Young came a game changer called Roger Bannister. So in the 1950s, runners were still trying to break the mythical 4-minute mile. No one had ever done it, and to be honest, many experts didn't think it was possible. In fact, they believe if it was even possible, it would be on a day with a runner with perfect conditions. Perfect weather, an outstanding runner, elite training, and a stellar track. Up stepped Roger Bannister, a full-time medical student, a maverick to some. No elite training, it was a cold day, wet track, and just like that, he redefined what is possible. 3:59. But 46 days later, Australian John Landy ran 3:58, and a year later, 3 runners broke the mark in a single race, and bit by bit, what was thought impossible became more and more possible. Soon, even high schoolers were getting in on the action, and to date, just over 1,700 runners have officially broken the mark, and the record stands at a mind-bending 3:43 by Hicham Garouge. More and more are breaking the mark, and it's only a matter of time until Faith Kipyegon's 4:07 is taken down to a sub-4 for the females as well. The psychological barrier is broken. What is possible expanded.
And you know what fascinates me most? In fact, probably more fascinating than even the fact that the sub-4-minute mile was broken, is that once it was broken, 2 months later someone else broke it, and then the year later 3 people in the same race broke it. So it wasn't like the physical barrier that is the most crazy thing to me, it's more the psychological barrier of like, it's been 100 years trying to do this, and then one person breaks it, permission, more people break it, more people break it. And it comes back to this thing that I have in my head. I don't know how to explain it, so I'm going to try. And it's called, or I call it, the line of possible. And the way it works is there's this element of running that we know is possible. Let's say the sub-2:10 marathon. Let's say a 4:01 or a 4:02 mile. They're all possible. So they're in the realm of the possible. And then on the other side of that is, we don't know. We don't know. It could be done. It could not be done. But every time something is done, that line of possible just crunches out the impossible currently and makes more currently possible. And actually, if you go back even further than Bannister, there was someone else that almost maybe created the line of possible in my mind. And that is the psychopath or the masochist that created the marathon.
Governor, I bring news of a great victory in battle against the Persians. There's a run from marathon to tell you.
A great battle, you say? Well, that is most
Wait, did you just say you ran from marathon?
How far is that?
I'm not sure, I think it was about 26.2 miles or something.
That is really far. Was it painful?
Exceptionally. Not sure how I did it, to be honest.
But you did. It is runnable. Wait. I'm having an idea. What if we get people to come from all around to run this distance and we'll call it a Oh, he's dead. Perfect. So physically being able to run a marathon or running a sub-4-minute mile, they're changing the landscape of what we know or what we think is possible. Have you ever actually appreciated how fast a sub-4-minute mile is? Because literally just for your entertainment purposes, I'm at the track today and I'm not going to attempt a 4-minute mile, but I'm just going to show you how ridiculous it is by running at about my 5K pace for 1,600 meters. and you'll see the time, and then you'll realise how crazy it is. I'm going to be running above my lactate threshold, which is, I would say, around a 17-minute 5K, just to give you some reference. Just wait till you see how slow it is in comparison to the sub 4-minute mile, and why only 1,700 odd people have ever done it. Right, we ready? Go! I am instantly regretting this decision. I went too hard. 322 kilometers. See? No way! Oh. 322 kilometer, and then 2 minutes for the 600 meters, which means 5:22. Just 1 minute 23 off. Let me just collect my thoughts. That was a sub 17-minute kilometer pace, and that is nowhere near. But you are not here to watch me destroy myself at 1,600 meters. You're here to hear the story of Cliff Young, which is an amazing story.
Okay, Cliff Young. Let me tell you an unbelievable story about someone that changed the game of running so dramatically that it's hard to imagine that it was different back in the day. But in 1983, a 61-year-old potato and part cattle farmer called Cliff Young in Australia, he's Australian, turned up to the start of the first ever Sydney to Melbourne Ultramarathon, which, by the way, was about 544 miles. Everyone looked at him. He was in overalls, he was in boots, he was 61. He wasn't even wearing his dentures because he said that they rattled when he ran. He stood on the start line ready to go. The gun went. After the first day, Cliff was significantly far back in last place. He won the race 5 days, 15 hours and 4 minutes later by a margin of nearly 10 hours. How did he do it? Well, it was shockingly simple, but it wasn't the done thing at the time. When all the other runners after the first day went to sleep to get their 6 hours, it was accepted wisdom that an ultra runner would run for 18 hours, sleep for 6 and repeat. Cliff didn't sleep. He just carried on running.
And here's the best bit of it all. Cliff didn't even realise that you were supposed to sleep for 6 hours. It was completely accidental that he just carried on running because that's what he knew.
So, by the time that the other runners woke up the next day, Cliff was already in the lead. And although they thought, oh, we can make it back because he ran what they called the Cliff Shuffle, they didn't make it back because every time they then went back to sleep the next night, Cliff extended his lead. He was used to not sleeping, working on a cattle farm for pretty much all of his life, trying to round up his cattle, round up his sheep overnight and going 2 to 3 days before without sleep. He was used to it. At one point in the race, he ran for 26 hours straight with no sleep. And when he did sleep, he was getting about 2 hours, whereas everybody else was getting 6 or more. So he just extended and extended and extended the lead. In fact, he was so embarrassed at the end of the race because he did not expect to win. He didn't even know there was prize money, that he did something also unbelievable. He split the prize money between him and the other 5 finishers because he just felt guilty that he won. And remember, this was done in 1983, and looking at that now, it's hard to believe that anyone would sleep for that amount of time in an ultramarathon when you know what happens in multi-day races now, like the Barkley Marathons. What an amazing story, and what an amazing game changer was Cliff Young. Once again, a runner, in this case 61-year-old Cliff Young, nudged the line of possible further along. The accepted wisdom that you could run for 18 hours and sleep for 6 and repeat was gone. Athletes started pushing even further towards their limits. I mean, I've competed in a 100-kilometer race that took 20 hours, and although that's probably considered small fry now, 40 years ago it may have been viewed very differently. Multi-day races certainly are. Take the infamous Barkley Marathons now. Although only 100 miles in distance, the elevation and terrain see to it that most years don't even have a single finisher. And the cut-off time to finish the 5 loops is 60 hours. And do you know how much sleep runners tend to get in those 60 hours? Almost none. Maybe a cat nap here or there. pushing their bodies to the absolute limit of what is possible. And none of that would have been possible without Cliff Young changing the game.
I absolutely love that Cliff Young story, so I hope that you do too, and I think it serves as inspiration and also shows us that you can nudge the line of possible. But it was a long time ago, 1983. I'm not even going to do the calculations because it's near to my year of birth. So let's bring us a little bit up to date. Let's talk about some game changers that have shifted that line of possible in more recent years, and I've picked 3 of my favourites. The first one being Jasmine Paris. So if you haven't heard of Jasmine, she's a 40-year-old ultra runner from the UK, and in 2019 she won the Montaigne Spine Race, which is an absurdly long ultra distance race. And she won it, not only winning it for the women, won it overall, she broke the men's record by 12 hours. Oh, and she did it whilst she was expressing breast milk for her baby, redefining the line of what we think is possible. But not only that, then she went on in 2024 to finish the Barkley Marathons. In fact, the first female to ever finish all 5 loops of the Barkley Marathon, and only the 20th finisher overall in 36 years. And if you don't know what the Barkley Marathons is, you need to look it up. It is the ultimate ultra marathon. And what about our very own favourite, Eliud Kipchoge, who I ran with, by the way, a couple of weeks ago, video here. Now, he's the first human that has ever run under 2 hours for a marathon. It doesn't even matter to me that it wasn't in an official road race. That should be irrelevant. The fact that he showed us that that is possible should be enough. And whilst he is absolutely one of my running heroes, I'm pretty certain that that mark was about to be broken by Kelvin Kiptum. He only needed to take off 36 seconds from his world record before he tragically passed away. But I think Kipchoge had shown the world what was possible. Kiptum was going to redefine it again, nudging that line of possible along. And although sadly Kelvin Kiptum's no longer with us, I still believe that there is going to be someone pretty soon that's going to step up and shift that line of possible to below 2 hours for a road marathon legal race. And finally, Sifan Hassan. What if I told you that you would go to the Olympics, you would train and race the 5K, the 10K and the marathon, and you'd win a medal in all of them? Would you believe me? Because I don't think people thought that that was even possible even a few years ago, and yet in the Paris Olympics in 2024, Sifan Hassan ran the 5K, won bronze. She ran the 10K, won bronze. But then she ran the marathon and won gold. And to pick up 3 Olympic medals in 3 very different running distances is absolutely unheard of. Once again, shifting that line of what we believe is possible. So whether it's racing, whether it's times, whether it's distances, whether it's how you train, these are game changers, shifting that line to allow all of us to redefine what we know as possible. But how do you make this all about us and what we can do? Well, I've got 2 pretty good examples of people we know.
And that brings us to how it's relevant for you, the runner, individually, while we're out on our easy run a couple of days before Mary's half marathon attempt, and mine as well. But before we even go into Mary's journey, there's another really cool case study I thought you'd benefit from hearing, that we've kind of been invested in the journey, and that's the journey of Matt Fox from Sweat Elite. Go, 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 go! Into this park. This park, by the way, is awesome. We've got people over there playing basketball, people over there playing takraw, there's people over there doing, I don't even know what they're doing. What are they doing?
It's like some kind of meditation.
Yes, some kind of meditation.
Sort
But
of
back to Matt Fox. So Matt's a friend of ours. We kind of followed his journey for quite a long time. Obviously he's got a big YouTube channel about running, which helps. That's how we kind of found him in the first place.
Yeah.
And he'd been trying to knock off a sub 220 marathon for years and years and years, right?
Long time.
Long time. Always either getting calf cramps or not quite hitting it. There was always a
So close,
blocker.
but-
The line of possible for him seemed to be at 220 something,
Yeah.
rather than sub 220. So what I like about Matt is he didn't give up.
Yeah.
He just carried on. He was absolutely certain that it was possible, and so he kept training. He kept looking at different ways to run marathons and to train for marathons, and then Chicago
Yeah.
that we did as well. Chicago, Matt ran sub 220 for the first time in his life. He was over the moon. We were over the moon for him. It was so cool seeing him in the days after. But then, about what, a month later, not even?
It was just over a month later.
Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Another sub 220. The line of possible suddenly had been shifted for him. Then, a month later or so,
Yeah.
CIM, another sub 220. In fact, he's taken his PB down to 218,
Yeah.
so 3 sub 220s in the space of about 2 months after
3 months.
years and years and years of not being able to do it. Matt shifted the line of possible so that now sub 220 is possible. That psychological barrier has been broken. But how does that apply to you, Mary? So Mary, I think for you, the first line of possible was even just running the 5 and the 10K and the half marathon, wasn't it? Is getting to those kind of points where you could even get your body to run those distances.
Yeah, when I first started running, 10K felt huge. It felt like a long way off and something that wasn't currently possible when I started. So I've had so many movements of that line as I progressed.
But then the line of possible for you was getting shifted along. You ran a marathon. You saw that maybe sub 230, maybe sub 330 marathon one day would be possible. Maybe an ultra marathon would be possible, or maybe a sub 20-minute 5K. Like, all of these were in the realms of currently impossible.
Yeah.
And you bit by bit knocked them off all
Yeah.
of the way. So you've now done a sub 25K, you've done a sub 40 10K, you've done an ultra marathon, you've done a sub 330 marathon, like bit by bit by bit. You've still got a sub 3 marathon, still got a 100 miler, 100K, still got a sub 90 half marathon. They're currently impossible.
Yeah, even sub 310 marathon.
Yeah.
I felt that.
Yeah, all right, sub 310. But the thing is, you're shifting your line as we go. The line of possible for Mary is moving. But how did we get there?
And we're going to tell you how it was possible, but just once we get to breakfast, because we're very hungry now.
That's better. So what are the 4 things that we did that we think really helped you move that line of possible along from impossible to possible? The first one? Experimentation. We tried loads of different things in our training: lactate threshold sessions, speed work, just easy runs, higher volumes, and you eventually find the thing that works for you.
Yeah, not mixing it up all the time, but planning like a season at a time and trying something new if needed in that bigger block.
Yeah, so when we say a season, each marathon training block, we would try something new. We wouldn't change everything every week. We would just go, right, let's try this for an 18-week block.
Yeah.
And that worked nicely. What was the next thing?
Experimenting with things other than running. So like really trying to improve recovery, strength work, mobility, sleep.
And
Nutrition, like that was a big one.
We really dialed in on all of the other things that were kind of tangible but not running, and I think they had a major benefit to you moving that line of possible as well.
Yeah.
We also stayed consistent. We just stayed in the game. Like, we tried to prioritize running over flashy sessions. So if there was a lactate threshold session but we weren't feeling tip top, maybe we'd dial it down to an easy session, but we'd still make it happen.
Yeah.
Maybe we'd run a little less, we'd still make it happen.
Yeah.
And the final one is that we never gave up. When Mary took all the knocks trying to hit the sub 25K or the sub 330 marathon, you came back again.
Yeah.
You came back again. You didn't give up. And every time you then made it and shifted that line of possible. And if you like this video, you are definitely going to like this one over here, which was when we ran a marathon with the guy that was doing 104 Ironmen in 104 days, which is absolutely insane. So hats off to Sean Conway. You're definitely going to like the vid. See you Wednesday. I'm trying to break a world record this week.